Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to European Parliament. Welcome to our important, event. I think that the event will show our readiness to address all challenges because the topic is very, very sensitive, and very, very universal. Health without postcodes. You can put a lot of topics under this frame of this definition. But we now are discussing accelerating access to rare complex disease therapies in Europe. I would like to thank my co-host, first of all, Stine Bosse. She is champion, a real champion in the European Parliament. Speaking about rare disease, speaking about innovation, speaking about defending needs of patients. I am so happy that Stine accepted possibilities to host. They are just co-hosts both, okay. And of course also I know that Maurizio is one of the best leaders when we are speaking about generally about fish freedom, about investment, innovations, about many, many topics. Maurizio is always on top. And Maurizio can help us today to move forward through our agenda. Okay, colleagues, Europe stands at a defining moment. We can choose to do more effectively, together, or continue with business as usual in very silo, fragmented way. And I think that we can choose first one. Across the EU, we are debating how to strengthen our research, innovations, and creativity, and our competitiveness, resilience, and technological leadership. But we should be clear about one thing. The purpose of innovation is not innovations in itself. It is purpose to improve people's lives, especially keeping in mind postcode definition. Europe is already strong in science, research, hospitals, universities, small and medium enterprises, and patient networks. Yet we have not been equally successful in translating these strengths into production, into business growth, and to, above all, faster access to innovative treatment for patients. For people living with rare and complex diseases, access to innovation is often the difference between hope and despair. Yet today, where a patient lives still too often determines whether and when they receive a diagnosis or a life-saving treatment. This is simply not acceptable. The urgency to act has never been greater. Around the world, regions such as the United States and China are moving faster to attract investment, develop biotechnology, and bring innovations to patients, of course, competing around the globe. Europe cannot afford to stand still. We know that what is holding us back: fragmentation, slow clinical trials, complex and over-regulated framework, insufficient scale-up financing, fragmented health data infrastructure, and limited biomanufacturing capacities. All those problems are on our tables. If Europe is serious about leadership in biotechnology, these are the barriers we must remove together and as quick as possible. Why we are today discussing those? Because we are encouraging everyone to be quick. Member states, industries, researchers, and so on, because we have a lot of challenges. Europe must shape its own future and to build a model that combines scientific excellence with equitable access, reflecting our values of solidarity and cooperation. Solidarity and cooperation is European Union value, globally respected value. It's not United States is a different one, and China also different. This is why I have constantly advocated for an ambitious European Biotech Act. It is a unique opportunity not only to strengthen Europe's biotechnology sector, but also to ensure that innovation reaches patients faster, especially those living with rare and complex disease. Our objective should be clear: to support sustainable growth, create high-quality jobs, strengthen European competitiveness, and at the same time, deliver better outcomes for patients through faster access to safe and innovative biotechnological solutions. I hope today's exchange will identify practical solutions and strengthen our shared commitments to a Europe that is more innovative, more competitive, and delivers treatment to patients. Doesn't matter where postcode is. Thank you. And now I ask Stine to say a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I feel very privileged sitting here with especially these two gentlemen on the podium, knowing that you both have championed this area and especially the area of rare diseases now for many, many years. And I've had the privilege to work with this now for 2 years alongside with you. And of course, the work has started. We did achieve something in the first medical package, pharmaceutical package, but now we really have to deliver. This Biotech Act is the time to deliver for many, many areas, but of course, especially when we talk about rare diseases. And we all know that not wasting one single moment is of the utmost importance when we talk about rare diseases. So it's time to act. We are also in a global race. And when we wrap up, I will come back to this, but we have to understand the conditions that we're operating in. And that means new solutions. It means much more bold solutions that we've ever thought about. And I don't think we have another 3 to 5 years. I think it's now. And that is why we also, and I really champion this together with Vytenis Andriukaitis, this is why we need to get rid of the thought of having 27 different places to go to. Once we have the EMA approval, and then we start all over again. And think about all the time wasted. So this we have to think about completely differently. And now is the time for exactly that. So we have to start generating real and true European solutions. And for me, when you think about what rare really is, it's only rare when you think about it country by country. When you think about it across the European countries and across the European Union, it's not rare. So who invented this strange idea of 27 different places to get approvals? This has to change. Patients' data, experience, and research has to cross borders, has to be much more tangible in the way that we think about it. That is going to be life-saving, and that is where we are going to push. That is why I strongly support the development of the 28th regime for biotechnology, a European framework that complements national systems by providing a simpler and more predictable pathway for innovators. Europe should become easier to navigate. Why should it be so complicated? It should not, and that is why we have to act now. We can maintain the highest standard of safety and quality while reducing unnecessary fragmentation and duplication. This will help innovators choose Europe. And this is what I will return to in my closing remarks. Researchers should also have much easier pathways. We have them here. We need to keep them here. We need to make sure that they can go from being researchers to also come into their solutions, come into production, medicines, solutions for patients. Today's discussions is therefore very timely and very necessary. The implication of the HTA regulation, the European framework for evaluating new medicines, is an important step, but it is only one piece of the puzzle. We must continue asking ourselves how we can design a European system that fits for the realities of modern science and the needs of our patients. And please remember, when we are politicians here in the parliament, we have one point to look at when we think about solutions. That is our citizens in Europe, patients in Europe. That is the point of our views. I hope today's exchange will help us identify practical solutions and reinforce a shared ambition, a Europe that leads in innovation because it also leads in delivering that innovation to its citizens. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Stine. And now, Maurice, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to your excellencies, MEP Bosse and Andriukaitis, for hosting us again in the parliament. And this is actually a magic moment, to build and to continue the momentum and the commitments that we started together with the year-end coordinators and all the other stakeholders at that high-level meeting that we had last December in 9 to 11. I mean, we remember that meeting because it was probably one of the first time in which there was a complete stakeholder and political discussion about rare diseases. And that meeting was also delivering an important document, which was our declaration, listing 8 points that now are 8 working groups. And this meeting is actually a demonstration that these working groups have generated this moment. The declaration indeed is not just a statement, but it is a political and a strategic commitment with clear priorities for joint actions in the years to come. And now the high-level meeting generated now a sort of movement, the health leadership mission for rare diseases, because we want to evolve in a very strategic and mission-oriented forum strategies, how to help and translate the political commitment into a coordinated action for rare and complex diseases and how to treat better the patient. So I'm very grateful to all of you to be here. And the reason is very simple. When we speak about access to orphan drugs, there is no single actor that can do this alone. And Europe really needs to share responsibility, but also, as we said, to share actions. So for the patients that we treat as physicians, access is not just an abstract policy question. It is a matter of life. It is a matter of having stakeholders thinking to innovation. And to give you just a few numbers, today, for those that are less than 5% of patients that receive medicine, there is the 95% of them that do not have a single treatment. And in 2019, there has been a comparative study about the EMA authorized orphan medicine, which was finding that the partial or full reimbursement was 93% in Germany, 81% in France, only 58% in Italy, and 52% in Spain. So even if we have a therapy, and the therapy is authorized in Europe, Europe does not have the same percentage in the member states. And this is really a crucial point that we need to point out. Then innovation has little value if it is delayed, inaccessible, or unevenly available after authorization. There is a gap that now we must address, and there is an urgency that Europe is actually raising in order to protect the patients, to protect the future of our patient. In this context, the implementation of the joint clinical assessment really offers an important opportunity for rare diseases, but from 2028. So the joint clinical assessment, of course, is not the unique weapon that we have, and it cannot solve alone the challenge. What is now is important is that if we want to be faster and to have a fairer access to orphan drug, we need approaches that actually reflect the specific realities of rare diseases. And even more problematic is the fact that drugs are not even coming to Europe. We saw data in December that over a 10-year period, 115 new active substances did not come to Europe, and 50% of them were orphans. So how do we make attractive Europe again? This must be, of course, the aim of the Biotech Act, to restore competitiveness, to facilitate drug access, to protect the patents of the drugs, and also through probably a proper supplementary protection certificate, which is crucial, especially for the orphan drugs. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much to MEP Bosse and Andriukaitis for your championship, for your commitment, for your passion, and for your infectious personality. Because what we need as treating physician and patients affected by rare diseases, we need you, because you are our torches, you are our light to give voice to the patients. And I take the chance also to congratulate Mr. Andriukaitis for the award of yesterday. Thank you very much, because you were awarded with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I think that there is nothing more deserved for all your commitment or your really passion for what you are doing. And thank you very much for what you are doing. Thank you very much.
If I may, one sentence, just Mauritius mentioned. We propose health technology assessment regulation in 2018, but it would be implemented in 2028. And that's its example, but he has not followed this way. And if he will adopt Biotech Act, it should be implemented immediately, not waiting 10 years.
No.
It's our promise.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's
Thank you
invite
very
our
much.
first panel.
Thank you very much. And now I invite Dr. Neil Grubert, Professor Alexis Artsimanoglu to start the first session of this wonderful meeting. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me now. It's a pleasure to co-moderate this first panel discussion with Alexis Artsimanoglu. The theme that has been chosen is a fit-for-purpose framework, tailoring joint clinical assessment for orphan therapies. We have a very well-defined framework for joint clinical assessment, but really the focus of our discussions this afternoon is how well adapted that is to the specific needs of rare disease therapies and to what extent tailoring is required. We've just recently reached a milestone on the long JCA journey with the publication of the first JCA report, and 2 further reports have been endorsed by the HTA coordination group and await final approval and publication by the Commission. So I think at this stage, we have the opportunity for the first reflections of how the JCA process and the framework are working, and indeed how they might need to be adapted to the needs of orphan therapies, the limited evidence that is available, the small patient populations by by definitions, and typically the very high level of unmet clinical need. So we want to take some time in this panel discussion to see what lessons can be learned from the early implementation of the JCA framework and what changes may be needed to better accommodate rare and complex diseases, including potentially the greater use of real-world evidence, what role the European reference networks and stakeholder collaboration can play, with a view to achieving faster and more equitable access to these therapies. And as we heard in the opening remarks, time is of the essence. Now is the time to act. So we want to think not just about the challenges, but more importantly, about solutions. And as MEP Bosse said, we need to think about bold solutions, given the challenges that we face. And indeed, we need to think about that in the round in a fast-changing global environment. We have a distinguished panel to address these themes, so may I invite them to join us, please. And in the interest of time, I won't be introducing them, but you can see their names and affiliations on screen. And I think they offer a very valuable mixture of backgrounds, so it will be very helpful to draw on their perspectives on how JCA is working thus far and what adaptations we could perhaps consider. So if everyone is in place, we'll start with our first question. So as I mentioned, we've had the endorsement and publication of the first JCA report. It marks an important milestone for European health policy. So based on experience to date, what would you say are the key lessons emerging from those first assessments? And what do they tell us about the strengths and limitations of the new framework? So I'll start by putting that question to Maya Matthews. I think that's a good place to start, given her role as head of the HTA unit at DG Santé.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the organizers for inviting us. And I think it's very fitting that we have, I still call him Commissioner Andriukaitis, but now it's MEP Andriukaitis, who was a big proponent of HTA. And it's true, it did take a long time. It was a long birth, but I'm very glad to be here to announce that the first baby has been born. And the first baby was for a rare condition. So one thing maybe just to clarify is that the rare diseases is happening now. So out of the current list of ongoing joint clinical assessments, about half of them are already for orphan diseases. So I think that's an important message to pass, that we can, as you said, discuss how this is going and to look for the larger pool of rare diseases that will be coming up in 2028. But for the current scope, it is for new oncology treatments and ATMPs. And so obviously there are many rare cancers. And so I think this is also very pertinent for the discussion here. In thinking about this, I think I wanted to mention 3 points, two positive, the strengths, and maybe one discussing a bit the weakness. I think the strengths were that, yes, we were able to show that it is possible. I think that it sounds very simple, but the fact that we were able to come together with all of the member states to pool our resources, the expertise, and to facilitate a system where we are actually analyzing in detail the clinical evidence of a new product at the same time that it's going through the regulatory process, I think that's quite a feat. And it takes a lot of work. And here I want to credit Roisin, who's the chair of the coordination group, because this is a very balanced proposal. It's a very balanced way of working, where we are looking at the different actors and the different roles of the actors. The member states have a very strong part to play. The Commission has a very strong part to play. The companies have a strong part to play. And we've also introduced the systematic consultation and involvement of patients and clinicians. And this, as I said, is quite a feat because it's very complex. One of the main things coming to the European Parliament, and here I look to the policymakers here, we still need to explain to people what HTA is. And here I think we're amongst people who know what it is, but even in my own house, it's very complicated. We have to try to demystify what HTA is. I think that's the first step that we need to work on. Another strength, as I briefly mentioned, was the fact that we are putting stakeholders on an equal footing. We're systematically involving patients in every joint clinical assessment and joint scientific consultation, as well as clinicians. In many member states, clinicians were already consulted, but not so much patients. And this has had some very positive knock-on effects at national level. So countries like Italy and Spain have now created their own stakeholder networks, and they're looking at ways of introducing systematic consultations at the national level. So I think these are some positive indications that this work that we're doing is also a very good demonstration of a new way of EU collaboration. The member states are really working together. And another myth that I want to dispel that in this first joint clinical assessment, I've heard people talk about, it's not like the assessor and co-assessor from two member states and they go away and they do their work and then all of the member states are supposed to rubber stamp it. That won't work. There is the continual involvement of all member states, because for this to be successful, and this is what I'll come to at the end, all member states have to recognize and to endorse and buy into this. And that means, and this is the bit where maybe I will come to the weakness, it takes time. It takes time to build trust. It takes time for all of the member states to swallow a report that might not be perfect for them, but they know that then their turn will come and they will become assessors. And, you know, this takes time. So trust building takes time. I don't think we have an AI tool yet to build trust. And then the final point is that I want to thank the co-legislators for having this staggered approach, that we just start with new oncology and ATMPs, then we move on to orphan medicines, and then we will extend the scope to all centrally authorized medicines, because we need to look at the resources and the capacities within the member states, even within companies, I hear, and also within the European Commission, because we need to be smart, we need to be agile, and we need to think about scalability. So for me, those are the areas that now, seeing how we are putting together the joint clinical assessments, we need to think about how we can scale this up. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. So interesting to hear that point about the need for balance. I'll put the question next to Roisin as chair of the HTA coordination group.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for the invitation here today, and especially to our esteemed MEP colleagues. It's my first time in the European Parliament, and I'm really happy that I get to talk about HTA. And of course, today is the first day of the Irish presidency, so I can't but mention this. And also the slogan for the Irish presidency is Níl neart le cur le chéile. Now, I'm not sure many of you will understand that, but what it means is strength in unity. And I think when we're talking about aspects such as rare diseases, the strength, and I think MEP Bosse, you had mentioned it, we are all together in this for European citizens, and it is something we do need to come together on. I was very happy that Maya clarified, actually, we've started to work already on these medicines. We have tasked ourselves with a difficult challenge. We have started with the most complex medicines to assess together. I think if we can achieve this, it's a little bit downhill after that. I hope it's a little bit downhill. So we've started already. If I look at the true strengths of this, and I worked with colleagues across all the member states since 2018. I worked through Benelux, and then I moved on through working through UNATA, preparing for this. And the journey that we've come on has been incredible. People told me in the beginning, this country won't move on that, this country won't move on this. We did. And actually what we've achieved to date is we've published methodological guidelines, which we all agree on. We've published now a JCA report, which we all agree on, and many other procedures, and also in collaboration with the wonderful HTA team in the European Commission. But also we work really closely, I would say, with HTDs across the stakeholder network, but also, and by HTDs, we mean the companies, of course, who produce these medicines, but also patients and experts. I'm very proud that this is one of the first pieces of legislation that actually puts patients in legislative terms. They must be there by the law, which is, I think, a great step and something we have to, and it's not just, a tick box. This is, we need meaningful engagement with patients, but also experts. If I look at the strengths, that's many of the strengths. But if I look at what we've done, so one of the other key aspects, and I think sometimes we talk about this, but we don't achieve it. We have an evidence picture now for a medicine that's transparent to every country around Europe at the same time at an early point. That's different from where we came from. We came from a point of a country would only have access to this information once a company came to that country, which, as we know, it doesn't come to all countries. They don't come to all countries at the same time. So we're really moving forward on the equity of access aspect. The access bit we do need to start to work more closely on, but then we need to really drill into the reasons that are blocking that access. And we have to talk about evidence. We need better evidence. We need cleverer evidence. We need to look early, figure out what will feed the systems that need it, and move forward there, so that we'll talk a little bit more about it, but that early advice, coming together to give advice that companies need, bring forward those SMEs that are developing, a lot of SMEs that are developing medicines for rare diseases. Limitations, yeah, we've become very adaptive in our approach, but timelines are really tricky. We've chosen to do this quickly, fast. So we publish the full report 30 days after the Commission published their license. This is important because we're moving at a similar pace along the regulatory. That's also quite disruptive. It's disruptive for companies because they now have to develop these evidence packages in parallel, and that's challenging. Yeah, and maybe I'll stop there. There are other smaller limitations, but let's leave some for later.
Thanks for those insights, Roisin. So I think that's really encouraging. That Irish motto for the presidency probably would work well for the JCA journey as well, strength and unity. I'll put that question finally to Anka Peggy Holtoff to give an external perspective, maybe.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. I first want to reflect as like the secretary of the board of HTAI, which is the International Association of People and Organizations being interested in HTA. I think the community really observes this with big interest, and many of our members have been part of the process of forming the JCA, not only the JCA, but the whole being part of the whole journey. And I want to congratulate Roisin and all the people who have been working in that for bringing that together. The interest of the international community is obviously to see how can we combine resources across countries, work together to get to good technology assessments, to share the experiences. It's also, I see a lot of interest from many other countries around the world to really see like how can we use that for what we have to do in low and middle income countries and so on. So I see a lot of potential here. As somebody being interested in evidence-based decision-making, I hesitate to learn from N of 1. I think that we still need to get a little bit more experience in that, see what happens when more assessments come at the same time. We need to see what happens. I mean, we are halfway now. Now it goes to the countries. We need to see how is it adopted by the countries? How much more information do they think they need, or are they happy with what is in the report? And how will it help to make fairer decisions across the European Union in the different countries in the way, as Mauritius Gapper said before, we want to have equity across the countries. Does it help us to get there effectively? So that on the more general part, I would like to share some observations more from my role as co-editor of the book on patient involvement in HTA, which was just published in February this year, and it's available open access to everybody. So if you're interested, download it and read it. What we see in the guidance is that although it's mandatory to involve patients, it's not very well defined. There is a lot of may and can and if of interest and so on, but there are not very defined processes and ways where patients have to be involved and how they should be involved. One example is the PICO, and it was mentioned that some countries really have established processes for involving patients, but others don't. And so it's a few leading countries, and the others is not yet so clear what that means. But especially in the rare diseases, I think it would be very important to involve patients from the beginning in the PICO formulation, and to make sure that what we do in the research for the HTA actually meets the needs of those patients. Then there is very strict rules for conflict of interest, which are made to protect the system from unfair influence from any sides. But it also means that, especially in rare diseases, many patients are excluded from the process because they were involved in, perhaps with the development in previous phases, and now they cannot be involved in the evaluation phases. But patients have knowledge. They have knowledge about the disease. They have knowledge about the healthcare system. They have knowledge how to navigate the system. They have knowledge of what it means to their families, to their environment, what the impact on what the patient care pathway in their environment are. And we really should see that we harvest this knowledge to make really good assessments which meet the needs of the patients. The other thing is that and the way we currently define patient involvement in the EU processes is that it's individual patients with a lived experience. That is good, but it may have the risk to give us a bit patchy information because every patient only knows the own patient care pathway and their own experiences, while there are patient groups who have potentially the capability to do research, to have collective patient experiences are based on either research or quantitative or qualitative research, which could inform the processes in the HTA. The way it is currently, the patient groups are involved by trying to help to find these individual patients, which is a lot of burden on the patient groups. I think we could get much more from them if we would allow them to be partner in crime here.
And Peggy, in the interest, I'll stop you there. I think that's very helpful indeed, building on what Roisin said. So we formalize patient involvement, but perhaps there's a need to refine and reinforce that process in practice. Let's take our second question. So rare diseases, by definition, are rare. So they involve small patient populations. As I said earlier, clinical evidence is often limited, and there's a high level of unmet clinical need. So to what extent can the current framework adequately respond to these particular challenges, or is there a need for a different assessment approach for orphan drugs? So I'll put that question to Roisin first.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, and I think that's that's the crux of the issue that we often experience when we start to look at the evidence. We have small patient numbers. Sometimes we have trials which have no comparator. We have shorter trials, observational information. It's a complex evidence picture, I would say, very complex. So the question really is trying to better define what the problem is. And yes, we have smaller patient numbers, but we're across Europe, and I think that point was made. How do we do these trials right across? And how do we bring these trials actually to Europe and do these trials right across all these countries? But also, how do we do more clever trials? Really getting into, at the very beginning, that scientific advice about what do we need as both regulators for what will address the need at the benefit risk level, but also what will address some of the questions that are relevant to payers at the end, because actually it is payers who buy health in their countries and across Europe. So they're buying essentially outcomes for patients. So we do need to look at some of these metrics that we're collecting in the trials. And how can we support smaller companies, in many cases, to, I suppose, leverage some of the more clever designs that are out there? And there are clever designs. Adaptive designs can accommodate possibly multiple treatments. And how can we actually provide the infrastructure for those kind of studies? Is there something that Europe can do to provide that kind of infrastructure? We did it during COVID, actually. We did mobilize those kind of studies. And is that something that could be looked at for this space as well? Because trials are expensive, and there's no doubt about it, and companies do need to spend a lot of money running individual studies. Therefore, can we in some way leverage that kind of design? But it's definitely a complex area, and it definitely will be difficult if we have these standalone, perhaps single-arm trials. It's going to cause a problem down the line, and there's no getting away from it.
Okay, so we need to work smarter above all. All right, so let's get an industry perspective. I'll put that question next to Victor Mertens, who represents UCOPE. And before I introduce Victor, an apology from his colleague Alexander Nutz, the Secretary General of UCOPE. He was on his way to speak here, but was frustrated by Deutsche Bahn. So had to return home. So Victor very kindly stepped in at virtually no notice. We'll ask him for his perspectives.
Thank you so much indeed. I'll do my best to play the role of Alex today. But indeed, just like the other colleagues, maybe I just want to start with big congratulations to Maya, to Roisin, and all the colleagues who've been working on that. Indeed, that first JCA report, I don't think was the easiest place to start, but hopefully, as you say, Roisin, start with the most difficult ones and then cascade your way down. I actually want to start, I'd written some things down, but I'm going to throw most of that out the door now, because I think what I've been hearing in the last 20 minutes, I agree with probably most, if not everything that's been said, which is, to me, very reassuring. It sounds like we all, not surprising, know where the pain points are. I think it's a question of how do we come together and how do we address a lot of those. And again, to me, it starts very much with, and I think, Roisin, you said the same thing, accepting the realities of the rare disease kind of space that we're working in. There are some unavoidable differences when we consider them, when we compare them to other therapies. The fact that we are dealing with really small patient populations that we can't get around. Definitely, let's build out larger clinical trial frameworks, but we're still going to be met with that fundamental challenge of there's still small patient groups individually. And I think that's a reality that we're going to have to deal with. And we need to look at that disease and that rare context anytime we look at a condition or look at a therapy in this space. And the same applies to a lot of those ethical and clinical trial structural limitations, where sometimes the ethical questions of doing a gold standard double-blind test just isn't ethical, isn't viable to do. And I think that is indeed the challenge, and I don't envy the role of the assessors in that, but I think that is the piece we need to tussle with. And I think that is where we need to move forward. And again, maybe my borrowing from your side, pointing at a few positives first before looking at where we need to improve. But I think what we pointed to, the inclusion of the patients and the experts, and as you said, in a very systematic manner, I think is fantastic. And I think we need to keep building on that. There's ways for us to maybe to improve that, which I'll get to. But I think that to me is already an exceptional step forward. And similarly, Roisin, I think you mentioned the early engagement, and that we'd love to see more. I think that is, especially for those smaller companies that UCOPE represents, is key. If we don't get that early engagement, we are going to see companies struggle. Companies that might have fantastic therapies that patients are waiting for. But if they struggle at that last hurdle, we're kind of throwing 10, 20 years of research out of the window, delaying access to transformative therapies. I think that's not a scenario that any of us want. So with that in mind, I think there's 4 really quick things I would say that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at making the JCA framework work for rare. And again, first is, as we already said, the PICO scheme, making sure that industry is involved in framing those and also being realistic and making sure that we don't create an overly complex system. I think a few of my colleagues have been modeling out the number of PICOs that we might be looking at. For some therapies, we might hit 50 plus. That's not a realistic system for us to be working with. The conflict of interest framework was mentioned as well. And like I said, we're already involving clinicians and patients. One in that first JCA, which is a great start. Can we build on that? And can we look at different conflict of interest frameworks that we have in different member states that maybe that maybe look at different risk grades so that we're able to get those experts in that are especially important in this case, where there might not be more experts. Probably half the experts are sitting in this room today. Early engagement I mentioned, but also I think those flexible methodologies. And again, we're seeing a lot of creative thinking from the regulatory space, allowing for some of those single-arm trials to be done. Again, not to compare, but I was speaking to the colleagues in the MHRA yesterday, and they had that new rare disease framework where they said, look, we're willing to accept a higher level of risk because of the conditions we're talking about. So I think to me, those are probably the 4 key points to point to as well, where we need to make sure this is done, because a lot of this research starts 15 years down the road, and we need that predictability to go forward. So I'll stop there, because otherwise I can fill up the rest of the 20 minutes as well, but I'll stop here for now.
Okay, so interesting thought about learning from best practice in member states, or indeed potentially even beyond the borders of the EU. And finally, I'll put that question to Karl-Johan Miren, again for a further industry perspective.
Well, thank you very much, and I agree with a lot of what has been said here also, and I think we also as a company, Alexion is a rare disease company that has been around for more than 30 years and investing in innovative therapies, focusing on rare disease and ultra-rare conditions also, especially areas where you see a very high unmet need and also where there are no or maybe very few treatments available. So we embrace the JCA process here. We want this to succeed. We are really want to do everything we can. But we also see that there are, giving our 30 years of experience, not mine, but the company in this field, that there are scientific challenges in this field also, and that there are needs for tailoring for the specificities around rare diseases. And maybe for me, just to give one example, there was like one mentioning here about single-arm trials. We have a condition, lysosomal acid lipase deficiency, LALDI. That's why we have abbreviations, like it is so complex, these conditions. When this was taken through clinical development, one form of LALDI is in the infantile, which is very severe, and you have a very low probability of survival. So you die within months. So this trial we did, it was not ethical then to do with placebo. So we had 9 infants in this trial and followed them for 12 months, and 2/3 of these infants survived. We compared this with a historical control group of 21 patients, and none of these patients, infants, had survived at 1 year. So I think this speaks a little bit to, we want to see that there is an allowing for this type of evidence and also flexibility around the evidence. I think still we need to use the innovative methods and methodologies also to that Victor mentioned here also. But it's really important so that you have this flexibility. Otherwise, we risk at not utilizing this evidence, excluding this evidence, and that will then lead to that patients will have delayed, or in some cases that we see in Europe, don't have access at all to these new therapies. So we really want to make sure that as many patients as possible can get access and can get earlier access. I think that is the main intention why this was set up also. And we want to do everything we can to make that happen also. So I think that's really critical for us to make this a success. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl Johan. So I think a key message there is the need to build flexibility into this system. I'm going to hand over to Alexis now to moderate the remainder of this discussion.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, all of you. Can we try to be a bit briefer in the second part? Otherwise, some will not have the opportunity to talk. I said at the beginning, so it's general. I mean, you all mentioned rightly the impact on patients. I think we should have your approach on how should the joint clinical assessment make sure that what happens really reflects the needs of the patients. And Kepegi, you already touched it, but you can briefly repeat it again, and then I will give the floor to my friend, the clinician next to you.
Yeah, I think I can be short on that. If we want to know what the impact of a single HTA or like a whole framework of HTA is on patients, we need to know what impact means to the patient community. If we measure something which is not of relevance to the patients, then it's probably not having much impact. So I think that leads back to the notion of involving patients throughout the process, and not only from scoping to reporting, but also in shaping the process and in making sure that it's done in a way that it meets the needs of the patient community. And to do that effectively, to involve these patients, I think it's important to define goals of the involvement. What do we want to get from those patients? What is the knowledge we want to harvest and we need for the assessment, and define that for each of the steps of involvement. And then that enables us to measure impact. It enables us to measure, actually, to evaluate, do we do this right or wrong, and can we improve something? So that is my notion around that.
Luca, can I ask you?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you very much to the organizer for having put a picture of me when I was 20 years younger. That's really appreciated.
It's a clinical assessment. It's okay.
What I might have a slight conflict of interest in what I'm saying right now, but I would say that ERN are the ideal infrastructure in order to run what you have just mentioned. There are reasons why I'm saying this. I would say in a recent meeting that we had in Brussels on March 26, on cross-border healthcare, it came out that, I would say, ERN are kind of the backbone of cross-border healthcare. So if we are speaking about healthcare without postcode, ERN can respond to that needs, meaning that we have a center in all the 27, I would say also 28 countries, because we're actively working also with Ukraine for that. The second point is that we are under continuous monitoring. Every 6 months, we are constantly evaluated in order to see the number of patients, what we are doing, the activity that we are doing. We have here some of the people that are continuously monitoring us. And I would say that this is a great exercise. In many ways, it keeps the clinical competence of a center always updated. Meaning you will have, I wouldn't say 5-star centers, but centers that are continuously under evaluation. And this is a plus for many ways. Not to mention the fact that we also have training and education programs that are ongoing continuously. Mauricio, that is leading the training and education working group of the ERN coordinator, can tell you that thousands, I'm not joking, thousands of webinar, training, courses that ERN have put in place in the last 10 years. And this is a plus in my vision, because this material is fully available, not only to the center, but also for all the people that are interested in this kind of activity. And last but not least, patient selection. We have registries. We know where patients are. We know where patients have been continuously followed up. And we know exactly what is their situation. Not only that, there is a continuous contact with patients. And I'm very happy that this has been mentioned many times. Many ERN are, for instance, there are ERN in which patients are in the steering committee. They are deciding the activity of the ERN as all the player, the beneficiary. And this is, in a way, a plus. In our ERN, patients have a yearly meeting in order to define priorities that they think are relevant. And these priorities are driving the activity of the ERN. So this is something that is really relevant. Then, continuous contact with patient association. We have meetings that are totally devoted to listening what patient association, and this is reported also in the activity. Last but not least, since I know that Alexis is already looking in a bad way, a real interesting part is ERN are actively participating to many projects. I will just mention 2 projects that are relevant. Realize D, that is a project in order to have smart clinical trial in rare disease. 4 ERN are going to work as a test bed in this project. And for instance, our ERN is working on 2 aspects. That is, do we really need a control arm group if we have registries? Good registries that have, I don't know, 10 years of existence and high quality of the data. And the second part is, do we really have a clinical outcome that are really updated right now? Because that's another relevant point also for HTA and for the clinical assessment. Some clinical outcome, just to give you an example of my ERN, for bone fragility, we have a clinical outcome that is reduction of fracture. And I always show, I couldn't bring the picture today, of 2 guys that have the same disorder, both in wheelchair, but one of them is playing wheelchair polo. So, according to EMA, they have the same risk of fracture. Maybe this is not the case. So, and the second project that is very relevant that I would like to mention is Erdera, where there is the clinical trial network. And we are lucky here to have Daria that is really greatly managing this huge, I would say, immense project that maybe she can update us on this activity that is extremely relevant. So I think that I've justified my first statement that ERN are the best place to run a clinical trial.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you. Well, maybe we can jump to the last question, which is, I mean, what real measures some of you think should be taken to ensure this alignment and avoid the supplementary data requests from national authorities once the joint clinical assessment is out again, which at the end arrives lately to the patients. Victor, can I start with you and then I will ask Maya?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think I mentioned my 4 points earlier, but if I could point at one of them, I think one of them is more interaction throughout the procedure, which means both ensuring JCA and JSCs are properly resourced and that we can have those conversations early in the process to figure out what those pain points are, involve industry, patients, everyone across the pathway, so that we can also take advantage of the data we have. Sometimes, again, we might have a lot of evidence that just can't or isn't being taken into consideration. And then my other 3 points as well, but that one I'll point out here.
Maya, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will also give the floor, if you don't mind. Roisin and I are going to answer very quickly, but together. I think Roshin also wanted to come in on that. From our side, I think, again, this is a key issue. So we're doing all of this work, front-loading it, doing it in a compressed time frame. And so it's absolutely key that the member states use these reports and also that the companies see this as a benefit. As we said, this is a collaborative exercise, but it's also a simplification exercise. You have one entry point. However, and this is what I often say, the HTA regulation is not really the full HTA. It's one part. It's the clinical evidence part. So I think where we need to now maneuver and become agile and quicker is working with member states, but also the companies to ensure that the second part, which is when you go into negotiations, etc., that can be done with as little effort and as with the most optimization as possible. But Roshin, I think you wanted to also compliment from your side.
Yeah, just very quickly, in the coordination group at the moment, we've asked all member states to give us feedback on what's happening at the national level, because this is only a first step. If you want, access happens in the country, so it doesn't happen at the European level. So we need this to now embed itself into national systems, and I'm happy to see that there is a lot of movement. Member states want to use this. They actually don't want to have to do this assessment again. I know in Ireland, we're looking at embedding it in our rapid review system, which is a system that's 4 weeks. You know, so we can already start to go straight to price negotiations using this evidence. So I think there is the commitment there. We don't want to, we've already put resources into this. We don't want to have to do things again.
Thank you very much. So before we close, can I have one sentence, but really one, and not a very long one, from each one of you with your main message? You can start.
Should I start? Yes, yeah, on the left here. I would say that let's work together and make this happen. And yeah.
Good statement. Please, Victor.
For me, I think the JCA system is a key way for us to get quicker, faster access. But to do that, we need to accept the realities of working in the rare disease space. That means we can't just use the gold standard. We need to acknowledge the challenges and the flexibility that requires.
Thank you. Maya, please.
Thank you. For me, it would be about continually raising awareness about this, because one thing, I know it's not one sentence, but I think everyone here would be very interested to know, guess how many downloads of the first JCA report there were in the first 24 hours? Anyone want to shout out a number? 1,200. Yeah. And even more interesting, guess which part of the globe these downloads came from? No. US.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Of course. Please.
No pressure on us at all. Yeah. So my plea is, let's delve into what the problem is around access. Let's look at the evidence. Let's try and focus on, because patients with a rare disease deserve good evidence as well. And I think let's not come up with a simple solution to bypass a lot of the standards that are there for other medicines. But let's also be realistic about the challenges in rare diseases. So we are tasked with really getting into this and figuring out how can we make this happen for patients, get cleverer clinical trials.
Please.
Yeah, I come back to my theme, involving patients throughout through research and participatory processes, goal-oriented, and documenting that in the report with like what impact it had on the assessment, to make that available broadly.
Luca, please.
Strengths together. That is the sentence that was just mentioned. I think that that's the key message, and we as ERN are here in order to work together.
So before I give the floor to my co-chair to close, I would also like to share just one statement from my side. I mean, I am a clinician. I'm like Luca. I am coordinating an ERN. I see patients every day. I really think we need to understand that no methodologist would ever validate that lack of evidence for a given assessment is considered as a proof that we continue doing what we are doing. I mean, it is a nonsense of methodology to say, because I don't know, I continue doing what I was doing, copying and pasting what we did for common diseases 10, 15 years back. The main reason for this is what we forget. We do this on the name of the patients, and on the name of the patients, we ignore totally the very strong evidence we have that these patients during this time deteriorate, die, and we pretend protecting them because we want to have more evidence that we could do better from what we are doing, which is, again, a nonsense for the patients. We need at least to be as dynamic as the diseases we are discussing. I mean, the diseases progress. We need to accept that the fact that initial assessments will be based only on limited evidence. Yes, this is true. But again, Luca mentioned it. Let us put in place the systems that urgently collect the data we receive for a second, third, fifth assessment is needed, while at the same time, those patients benefit from what they contributed to do. I mean, this is a continuous process, and it will change. Diseases changed. We discovered them. They are not fixed, stable things. So, and again, well, yes, of course, I will talk about the ERNs. The ERNs were not invented by someone else. So they were invented by the European Commission, by DG Santé. They are all over Europe. They have the best experts for the diseases, which by chance also see all the patients that have the rare diseases. So why it is so difficult to collect that data? It is just an assessment that you deliver, and then you ask for the follow-up to take place and have strict methods of re-evaluating and of reassessing. But sitting there expecting that something will appear on day clearly is not the good methodology. With this, I will ask you to close.
Thank you, Alexis. We're already a little over time, so I'll keep my comments brief. I think you'd agree that's been a very thought-provoking discussion. We're indebted to our expert panelists. And with that, we will move on and take our second panel discussion of the afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are we going? A real pleasure to now. A real pleasure with the microphone now to welcome you to the second panel that I have the pleasure to moderate. My name is Joseph Figueras, Director Emeritus European Observatory, and a fan and collaborator and contributor with the European Reference Networks. Can I ask, as I speak, to step up time quickly to have my panelists joining me, please, in the table? Panelists, can you join me, please? Remember who you are, or I have to remind you? Good. Thank you. Roisin, sorry, it's the Irish pronunciation, I'm doing wrong, gave us a very good entry point. What happens, Roisin and Maya, when you have developed these JCAs, when EMA has approved the regulation, what happens in member states? Do they pay any attention? So what we are now doing is going in this journey that the RNs have been teaching me over the years, from the lab to the bedside. We're not yet in the bedside, friends. We still have to go through the country, obviously. So we have different regulatory regimes. MEP Bosse was telling us, well, why do we have so many? Well, we still have so many. We hope that the Biotech Act will help us with that. We have HTA there. And remember, JCAs are not HTA. They forget the money, the value for money. So we need to see how does that play in our member states, the regulatory regimes there and the HTA there. That's the first block I will be discussing today. The second block is in this world of Lennon of imagine that JCA and HTA happens, and it's happening wonderful at national, European level. It happens at national level, but then how do we pay for it? My second block today, and they're all going to answer these questions. How we make it affordable? How do we get the companies to go and commercialize in the small countries? There are different levels of ability to negotiate in particularly small countries. So that's my second block. How do we do that? But even then, in this my world of imagine, we are in the third block. Even when there's payment systems, even then, when I said regulatorily wise, it's an HTA has been approved at national level, it doesn't reach the patient. It doesn't reach because the providers have different views, because the clinicians don't know, because the budget has not arrived at the hospital, because you're not in the registry of the hospital, and so on and so on and so forth. So the patient yet has not reached that treatment. So we have a difficult task, colleagues, here. So I'm very grateful that you're joining me for questions I don't have answers to. So I hope you will be providing all these answers. So let's go to the first block and invite, I think I have online, I hope, I cannot see it. Can I ask Christina Larsson and Michael Schlander to join me virtually? They both tried hard. They both try hard to be here. It's not an excuse, but climate change is what it is. So they all had problems. It's not Deutsche Bank trains in this case, but I think it's been Eurostar, Rotterdam fire. I don't know what's been happening, but the point is cannot be here. But they're here practically online. I would like to start with Christina Larsson, if it's okay, and then I'll go to Michael Schlander. Christina, are you here with us? I cannot see you.
So yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
You're here. Brilliant. Thank you, Christina. Christina is head of the orphan medicines at the EMA. Since 2014, Christina had spent also 8 years in charge of the scientific working party. So she knows a lot about the research and she knows an awful lot about orphan disease. Christina, if that's okay with you, I'm going to use you as a bridge from EMA to member states. I mean, part of the pharmaceutical legislation, you've been tasked to accelerate regulation. As Alexis and the police said really beautifully and nicely, patients are there waiting. Some things, how do we accelerate the regulatory review timelines? So these these orphan drugs are authorized to then go into the member states. What are you doing, Christina? What are you doing? I heard you're doing lots of things. Is it working? What are you doing?
Yes, we are doing quite a lot. And I think one of the things that I think personally is important is planning in that case. So I believe stronger planning leads to stronger outcome. And it's definitely the case when I cook at home, for example. It's best to have all the ingredients up front and to know what I'm going to make here. And I honestly believe that the same is true for medicinal products development, and particularly in the context of rare diseases where patients are few and precious, and each clinical study could potentially be used for regulatory purposes. Now, the clinical study programs then need to be designed to create the necessary evidence to support the various decisions towards access. For us, it's benefit risk for the regulatory approval, but then it's the relative effectiveness for the HTAs. And these assessments...
You do JCAs yourselves? I'm just going to provoke you for the sake of it. You know, what is this difference between the risk benefit and what the GCAs are doing? I know it's different, but some of us sometimes don't understand this difference.
Okay.
You're all looking at efficacy and effectiveness, right?
Yes. So, well, the benefit risk assessment is basically to check whether the study that the company conducted can show that the product has more efficacy than it has risk. But that does not mean that you have compared it with anything else in particular. And I know that you were talking about single arm trials before, for example, but it could also be a placebo control study. You may then not have actually tested it versus other products that are approved.
Excellent. And how can we continue? Sorry, I interrupted you there because I think it's an important clarification that many people ask for.
Okay, no, that's very good that you asked, actually. No, but okay, so I mean, I think that we do already have mechanism to support this evidence generation. So we have at EMA scientific advice for medicinal products, also in parallel with the HDA colleagues, and through the joint scientific consultation that I think you've spoken about. And I mean, we have based this is such a positive experience. For over 15 years, we have done this collaboration and demonstrated that when we work together, we also can synchronize the discussion and the outcome is much better. And recently, we also had work with HDAs and EMA on evidence generation for pediatric medicines. And that then also generated a paper with regards to extrapolation of data. So there is there is evidence to show that working together does improve the outcome as well. But personally, I believe that the planning should start even earlier. And of course, since I work with orphan designations, that's important for me. So we have designations early on, which can give financial incentives and scientific advice. We also have this priority medicine scheme, PRIME, which also is a possibility to discuss at an early stage. And then looking ahead, I also believe that the new pharmaceutical legislation will contribute to a more agile regulatory process, because we will have very relevant, this is relevant to support the pediatric and rare diseases as well. So we will have new or different incentives for orphans. PRIME, as I mentioned, will then be actually in law. We have these platform marketing authorizations.
What kinds of incentives, Christina?
For orphans or for?
Yeah, for orphans, yeah.
So the incentives are similar to what's today. So you get fee incentives. You can get the advice for free, for example. And similar to today as well, we have the exclusivities at the time of marketing authorization, although it's changed a bit in the future. But yes, those are the incentives. And there's also national incentives for orphan diseases.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Christina. But stay online, please, because I'll bring you all and to come up with some of the priorities. And congrats for all the work that you're doing in this field. We are really pleased. I have Michael Oslander as well online, that couldn't make it either. Founding chairman of the Institute for Innovation and Valuation in Healthcare, Innovation in Germany, and professor of health economics at Heidelberg University. You are our expert academic. Michael, I think you're online as well. Can we see you? We switch. I seen you earlier following attentively the conversation here. I don't hear you.
Should be able to see me.
Brilliant. At least we hear you, which is very valuable. Michael, one question that we scratched, you were there in the prior panel, and I'd like us to pursue a little bit more. If Roisin, with all this work are doing these joint clinical assessments, why do we need to do them in separate countries? Are there so many differences? Are they doing the things better? Are national variations justified? That's the first question. But the second, which is even more difficult, but you are a proper academic, is how do we evaluate value for money? How we assess value for money, cost per qualis in orphan diseases? Orphan drugs rather, and orphan diseases, same thing. So how do we do that? The standard HTA methodology doesn't help us very much. We're not doing very well for our patients there. Sorry, I'm putting on the table a very hot issue, but I think it's worth putting on the table. What's your reflection on that, Michael?
Well, you are actually putting on the table two separate questions.
Yes, thank you.
And if you allow me, I'd try to offer answers to both of them separately because we shouldn't mix them up. They are interrelated because we need to think about how do these joint clinical assessments at the European level translate into national assessments. And of course, we know that the value assessment and the design of the social system still is member state responsibility. So we have complexity built in here. Let me perhaps say something about these national differences and their impact on joint clinical assessments. Because one of the pertinent issues has been the debate about these PICOs, the patient population, the intervention, the comparator, and the outcome criteria. And in particular, the definition of the appropriate comparator has been a repeating issue. And while I'm really happy about the initiatives that have been taken, and while I think we should not only congratulate on the noble objectives behind JCAs, we also should congratulate on the agencies that have been doing them so far, having shown that they are technically feasible. That's quite an achievement right from for the start. Yet, that does not answer, of course, the appropriateness of the methodology, in particular when it comes to rare disorders, and the issue whether the same framework for evidence generation should be used or can be used, in fact, in situations where we have only limited patient populations and all the other issues that have been discussed repeatedly regarding evidence generation here. Just to note, we should not overlook that the first JCA had 8 PICOs defined, of which 7 could not be answered. And we saw later on, relatively rapidly afterwards, 2 other JCAs being discontinued because of a shortage of evidence. And we have yet another one that was discontinued, but that's for different reasons. But we should be a little bit cautious celebrating too early and declaring victory at a stage where this has, in my view, not yet achieved, despite of the fact that the direction that has been taken is a good one. What can be done about that? The national differences are reflected in the choice of comparator quite prominently, obviously. But now we have the issue about how do we handle indirect treatment comparisons, for example, or what we saw, what are we going to do about non-comparative clinical evidence? How can we use that for comparative value assessments? And my take on that would be that we need something in between rigid standards that are applicable to widespread diseases but won't work in rare disorders on the one hand, and not go back to just simply best available evidence, which might at the end means that HTA agencies have to give in on whatever is available or is not available. There might be an approach to look at what is the evidence that can be reasonably be expected in a given situation, which is something that would have to be defined jointly between the technology developers and the HTA responsible stakeholders in the context perhaps of early strategic consultations that are being offered. That might be one approach how to tackle that, but certainly I would say we cannot simply use the rigid framework that is applicable to diabetes or hypertension or...
I agree with that. That's very helpful. We need to press on. Can you make a couple of comments? I would like to involve now both of you, Maya and Roisin, on this debate, because it would be a really interesting debate. We don't have the time, maybe later. Michael, just a short one on the value for money, which makes it even more complicated.
This makes it more complicated. You could argue it's an omission of the European process at this stage. I think the omission is there for good reason, because we have too much heterogeneity at the moment. Some would go for, as you suggested, cost per quality or cost per outcome per patient. Some others would say we go for budget impact, which might reflect citizens' willingness to pay to make available a treatment for a population with a rare disorder, a completely different approach. Personally, but this is, of course, a personal statement, I would certainly not recommend to go for anything close to a cost per quality threshold,
I agree.
including any type of incremental cost effectiveness ratio, because to reduce it from all the theoretical underpinnings, you can easily see that relying on a ratio where the numerator and the denominator will lead to cancelling out the size of the population and therefore the budget impact can hardly be a good idea to reflect the peculiarities of rare disorders.
Perfect. That was really, really good. In very few minutes, still we're running late. You addressed this to in my opinion extremely well. Stay around, please. Stick there, please. Let's move to the second part: affordability, market launch, share financial risks. Daniel Naumovas, you are my perfect vice minister. You are my perfect vice minister because, among others, you are very smart indeed, and you are an academic working in biotechnology and a fan of rare diseases. So now that you're a policymaker, what are the constraints in smaller health systems like yours in Lithuania to pay for orphan drugs?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and it's my pleasure to speak here. And first of all, I would like to congratulate on Irish presidency first day, and as you know, Lithuanian presidency is coming up. And I want to mention that Ireland and Lithuania are definitely biotechnology and innovation countries, and we will definitely move forward with all the potential innovations, Biotech Act, IVDR, MDR, and so on. So we are happy on that and definitely have some promises to make. But moving back to the question. First of all, I do believe that in European Union, we are on the right path. We have a lot made right with the innovations with rare diseases. European reference networks, 1 million genome project, EHDS is amazing. Joint clinical assessment, we are doing everything right, but not in a coordinated way. We need to make it more coordinated way. And all these problems in all the countries. We are a bit smaller country than usual European country, and access to medicines, especially to the orphan medicines, is even lower in smaller population countries. And this is a problem, and the topic of today's speech is about postcodes, and this definitely, we see it in Lithuania, and especially in smaller countries, like in Malta, it's even worse. And there is a statistics every year. Innovative pharma companies are making statistics with IQVIA wait list. It's like the list of innovative medicines that different countries has access or not. And Lithuania is always in the bottom part of these statistics. And of course, we want to be better. And when we check what they include to these statistics, they include all the medicines that are accessible in Europe. But more than 70% of those are not even coming to our HTA and to our system. They're not even trying to come. No, then
we'll ask the industry in a minute about that.
How can we reimburse
what
it?
Can you do then? What can you do to attract them?
Yes, but then we of course asked it, and the questionnaire also from this study asked it, and the main reason is usually market size. We can, of course, our HT is not perfect. We have only since 2020, and it was slow at the beginning. Right now, we are much faster, much better, and definitely having more medicines coming through. But still, the biggest problem is market size, and also if there are representatives from
these companies. Can Europe give you a solution?
Exactly. That's what I want to say, because Europe is one unity, because we have everything standardized. We are standardizing everything in European Union, and I do believe that this is a great way, starting from the currency and moving forward with other, like HDAs, one e-health system, and everything else.
The MEP Bosse is very happy to hear that.
And rare diseases are a good example how we can work together, standardize, and then we won't have small market of Lithuania of 3 million people. We will have bigger market of 400 and more million people who need this treatment.
I think that's the way to go. Well, now I got the industry. Shay Buxpan, it's nice because you are both experts, researchers in biotechnology. Shay is VP Commercial EMEA Ultragenics. So, why don't you launch your products in Lithuania? I'm just being facetious here. I don't know whether you launch the products there or not. But what does it take for you to launch in small countries? Are you happy about in the whole market? Are you happy with the whole EU? You know, not quite.
I will share our perspective and build on some of the earlier comments and from the panelists. So first, I mean, I'm representing Ultragenics here, which some of you know, but for anyone who doesn't know, it's a biotech company. Was founded by Dr. Milkakis, and really the mission of this company is to develop therapies for rare and ultra-rare genetic diseases. As I'm sure some of the audience know, one of the diseases to which we have a therapy is MPS 7. I think there's around 200 children in the entire world. So really the mission of the company is really clear. It's highly focused. And it's also clear for us as the EMEA team, EU team, that we are being asked to find solutions to bring those products to patients. So when we think about EU, and myself and the team that are working together with me, when we're looking at all the countries and asking how can we bring those products to patients, to make it simple, we think about three key frameworks. One is the patients. So do you have patients there? And some of the diseases are so rare that sometimes the patients are not there. So that's question number one, where I know in other meeting of HLM Rare, you will discuss the newborn screening. So there's other challenges there that we also try to partner as an industry and support. The second element, to which I will give a little bit more attention, is of course the access, the pricing and reimbursement, which is the most challenging one, and I'll come to that in a second. And the third dimension is our operational footprint. So we are not a large company. We're not in every country over EU and definitely not EMEA. So how can we literally bring those products to market? I think for the third element, that's operational. We can solve for that. We partner with companies and we're able to find solutions. For the pricing and reimbursement, that's the largest challenge we have. And basically what we do, we try to look at all those countries where we see patients and identify whether there is a way for us to enter into negotiation, discussions, HTA processes with authorities and find a way to bring those products to market. It's not easy because each system is different. I think we had MEP Bosse started this meeting today, 27 different systems, 27 different dossiers, and it's expensive. It takes a lot of effort. So for
it would save you transaction costs if you purchase together, right?
Of course, I agree. And I think if you take it, I mean, maybe one example on that, we have one product for a disease with roughly 1 to 300,000, and we've identified around 5 patients in a small Eastern European country, and we found a way. With a partner, we went through the pricing reimbursement, and the product is now available on the market. So we're trying to do that from our perspective. If there is no solution for pricing reimbursement, we will still try to find pathways. So if there's a request coming, we will engage with the payers, we'll have discussions and try to find a way. But as you said, it's not the most efficient way, and it also delays the access to those patients. When you take it to the next level, so let's assume you have, again, an ultra-rare disease, and I'll take another example from the MPS space, Sanfilippo disease, roughly 1 in 1.5 million. From incidence perspective, some countries, Belgium, where we're here today, maybe they will see a new patient once every 2 years. So now you enter into the system from pricing reimbursement that from the start was not designed to do an evaluation for this product. The urgency to treat is extremely high. Every day you lose, patients are losing some capabilities or losing their brain and capacity. So what do you do about that? And this is where, and there are already some discussions. We were thinking that, again, following what we have with the JCA, what EMA is doing, and looking at the Medicine Critical Act, maybe there's an opportunity, again, to use that and have engagement with the European Commission, with some countries together, and find ways to agree on bringing those products earlier with few markets that are grouping together to have those discussions.
I like to hear that very much. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's the way to go. And you guys agree clearly. So that's the way to go. Marcello Catani, this is perfect because we link it perfectly well now with the question I wanted to ask you. President of Pharmaindustria, 20 years in the life science sector. He's been leading major pharmaceutical industries over the years. You're a real powerhouse in exporting drugs, which is what we need at the moment. We need industries like yours that make us more competitive and more innovative. But the difficult question for you, Marcello, you know, some of us, we've been doing research, not me, but some of my colleagues, on how we pay you, managed entry, outcomes-based payment, value-based, innovation. How do we pay for orphan disease? What would you like to see, and what do you think is the best thing, not only for the industry?
And today we have, so first of all, thank you very much for this kind invitation. Thanks to Vytenis and of course Maurizio. We need to be super pragmatic, right? Because today pharmaceutical industry is the first industry driving commercial benefit for Europe, more than 200 billions in 25 and in Italy as well, right? It's not just a big hub for manufacturing, but driving the economical and social benefit for the country. We need to recognize more value for innovation. That's simple solution, right? And we missed a great opportunity with the European pharmaceutical legislation because at the beginning, we reduced the regulatory data protection 1 year. We have a complicated mechanism to recognize more protection to the IP, when you are doing innovation compared to US and compared to the other big elephant in the room, China. Last year, China has developed new medicines more than Europe and US together.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I talk about an elephant in the room? SPCs, what's your position on that? Because there's some debates in Parliament.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I put these things in the table, although we're not planned, but...
We must be super ambitious, right? Because we need to defend the value and defend the time, shortening the time to access. Two big dimensions, because today we have the MFN, the most favored nation, coming from the US, and the challenge for all the countries in the panel to recognize the value, and because we have all mechanisms of clawback and paybacks that are reducing the value on innovation. And of course, we have to work because we would like to avoid as well, the unsustainability from manufacturing standpoint. We have increased costs plus 22% after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have the Hormuz crisis impact on energy and raw materials, starting from APIs, that in part is related to rare disease as well, because innovation is 50% biotech.
We see the challenges, but let me push you on the protection certificates. Would that help? And what else would it help in terms of managed entry agreements?
Yes.
What do you like to see to compensate for all these things that are very expensive?
On the SPC, let me say the ambition would be 24 months, very clearly. Okay. Right? If not, okay.
Across the board for orphan diseases?
Is better than 0, 12 is better than 6, but 12...
You're ready to negotiate,
Yes, we need to address key, stronger messages that not only Europe is a great place for the patients, right? Because over 20 years, we secured more than 27 orphan medicines or indications available, right? But then the time to access by countries, of course, but as well, that is a great place in which to invest and attract investments because we have an incredible academy, of course, but we need to improve tech transfer, of course, and to have a safe, strong IP protection, and SPC is the other side of the IP protection. So the value is starting from strong, competitive SP protection, SPC, and as well, please don't forget that FDA on January has reduced, simplified, streamlined the way to get registration for orphan medicines, with setting again and pushing the bar at another level. So this can be a good benchmark to registry new rare disease medicines in Europe as well.
Cristina, I hope you're online because then I'd like you to reflect on that in your last 30 seconds about comparing with FDA. You don't want to say anything about payment systems very briefly? 1 second, 1 minute. Payment systems at national level.
Maybe I can...
My initial question.
I can discuss about Italy. Italy is recognizing, broad access on rare disease. Maurizio was discussing before. We can improve for sure. Larger screening panels. But on the value recognition, so the price level, we have many incredible, creative payback systems. Perfect. And as you know, today we have other challenges, the MFN. So how to secure that
innovation will land in Europe again and in every member state, right? And the payback systems have been in the scope of 301 investigation for Germany, for instance, right? But Italy is the same, and France is the same.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This has been really helpful. You manage an awful lot with these little minutes I give you, and I'm still running late. Yuzhang, we love you very much. You know that. The EIB, you know that the story about they said to a robber, why you rob banks? He says, because that's where the money is. Well, the EIB is now, seriously, the EIB, we're very grateful that you are going to be investing 10 billion, we understand, on the whole clusters of innovation and so on. So it's a very important element in the biotech. So I don't want to be facetious, but really thank you. Yuzhang is head of division Digital and Life Sciences at the EIB, as I said, probably one of the most innovative and exciting places to work in the bank right now. One is perhaps you may want to talk about the 10 billion in a minute, but first, how could you help these member states, Lithuania and others, with pool risk instruments, investment mechanisms, to able to, pools, perhaps funds across Europe that could help to buy and to access to these orphan drugs?
Yeah, thanks, Josep. Very glad to see you again, actually.
A pleasure is mine.
So, but first of all, thank you very much for the invitation of the EIB at the European Parliament. Very honored to be here. To answer to your questions, actually, we are already doing this. So for the last decades, we are trying to finance actually a lot of biotech companies across Europe, across the European Union. And some of them are indeed indicating in the orphan disease fields. Actually, we finance different cases. So orphan disease in neurodegeneratives, orphan disease, even touching children. I think you've heard about this horrible skin disease, the epidermolysis bullosa, which is horrible and usually life-threatening. We have helped Irish, actually, biotech company to develop some treatments. So we are doing that. What we can do more is indeed this brilliant idea that has been developed together with the colleagues at the Commission, is the Biotech Act, is putting really a spotlight on the investment that we can do so far. So until now, the bank has been investing more or less 4 billion euros a year in the healthcare sector. And then the colleagues from EF also are obviously nurturing the whole venture capital worlds, also targeting the sector as well. With the Biotech Act, and now we're running the pilots, you mentioned this 10 billion, etc. But what we would like to achieve in the future MFF period is that we anchor this ambition into a much longer period than just the next 2 years that we're talking about. So what I know that we have been discussing about the access. So purchasing the drugs for the patients.
Yeah.
We're helping there as well. We're helping the hospitals. We're helping the communities, etc. But
so you have funds to support these member states in purchasing orphan drugs or cancer drugs or innovative drugs.
Drugs in general, yeah.
Yeah.
However, I think if we flip the coin and we look at the other side as well, you need the availabilities of all those drugs as well.
Yeah.
You need the innovation across Europe, and you also need, I say, a larger number of available treatments that can be developed. And there we are trying to help. So we're trying to help from already a very early stage. So we're investing directly into these biotech companies. I'm saying investing, we're not providing a grant into the companies. Actually, there is actually, let's say, an advantage to this, because the financing of these communities of biotech companies is much more sustainable, because we are playing with a portfolio effect. So if we invest into one biotech company, well, the risk is, especially when we are talking about rare diseases, the risk is very high. But if we are talking about the financing of about 100 companies, then the risk has been mathematically decreased. Obviously, some will drop, but some others will be successful. So we are playing with the scale. Another dimension we are playing with is the timing. I mean, we are supposed to be a long-term investor. I mean, the bank exists already nearly for 70 years, since the Treaty of Rome. The idea is that we are patient. We're not there to say, okay, in 2 years' time, we need to make a return.
Yeah.
We can help the company over a long period.
Wonderful news. Can I ask you another question everyone is wondering about? I mean, this 10 billion, how are you going to assess real innovation clusters? It's difficult, isn't it?
Yes.
You do that for a living, I know that.
It is a challenge, and that's why the bar is very high. So here, what we are trying to do is indeed to deploy all these investments, which, with the help of a guarantee from the European Commission, we are trying to deploy this financing scheme to all the biotech, medtech companies across Europe. Indeed, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sorry to push you in that way. Let's now move in this imagined world. JCA, HTA, EMA, all done. We're in the country, it's in the list, it's reimbursed. Well, the money is there. The EIB has given us the money to do it. We advertised it. So we're there. And yet, Rosa Castro, Patient Perspective, Public Health Affairs Director, Ordis, Euro Ordis, a key sister organization to us, the ERNs. The patient doesn't get it. The patient doesn't get it. Shall we blame the providers? The providers, our clinicians here, are very, very committed. You can see the ERNs colleagues. I admire you, Alexis. I admire you, Ruth, for the work you're doing to get, but it's not the case everywhere. It's not the case everywhere. The clinicians are not aware. The budget is not the hospital. Rosa, what's your perspective? What are still the barriers that remain for these patients to access these drugs?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, actually, and the invitation for Eurordis Rare Disease Europe to be here today. I think maybe let me reverse and start from the end in case I don't have time to go to the key message, because I think that one of the things that unites the rare disease patient community is the expertise. So the patient partnership can really help, if I may say. I mean, we appreciate it. I think the messages that emerged from the first panel also, to know about HTA and how you all put patients at the center. We have a few solutions also from the patient community, so we are ready to contribute with those. And also on regulatory issues and on incentives, you might be very familiar with what the Eurordis have been pioneering along with other organizations. Now, let me go back to your question, because actually, we wish that actually after all this odyssey on reimbursement, we wish that that will be effective access, but it's not. Sometimes, and you know, the concept of access to medicine is really to have the right medicine at the right time, at the right place. And here is where a lot of things can happen, actually. So Eurordis in previous surveys also documented and had testimony from patients who had been waiting for these treatments even after the reimbursement decisions were made. And this can have irreversible damages. So that's, probably goes without saying, and our clinicians know it very, very well, have experienced. Why? There are many reasons. I think we need more evidence, actually, to know what's happening, what's blocking this. There are several reasons that we have documented in previous reports, like administrative delays, the fact that we are asked for upfront payment. And I will go there also with let's say, a solution that is not easy, but in which Eurordis has been pushing also there. The lack of coordinated follow-up, and also sometimes simple lack of awareness. It's true, European reference networks have been key, and Eurordis have been, advocating for you since the beginning, since before they were, set up. So we are there for you, but of course they are not in every place. There are also other centers of excellence, and they also have to be really embedded in the healthcare system. I go maybe very quickly.
Tell me solutions. I want to hear solutions.
Yes.
I want to hear solutions.
So
what can we do? Is administrative, budget silos, not information of the doctors? What it is? Choose me one or two that you say, that's what we should be doing.
Well, along with this revision of the Biotech Act, which we are closely following, and it's about, of course, having the right incentives, the right ecosystem, we need to solve a problem that has been there for years, and it is about the cross-border healthcare framework, which is, I mean, I'm not going to enter also in the details because there are a lot of experts again in this area, but we can share this with you. There is a dual system that is actually not working well for patients, where even with reimbursement decisions happening, the patients have to really go and navigate very long periods of obtaining the prior authorization. Yeah. We believe that the key solution there will be to amend the social security regulation. That's difficult, but I believe that in this parliament, there is the will, in the member states, there is the will.
Our MEPs are listening?
Where the patients are expecting a solution, really.
We want you to reflect there about that. That's a big challenge.
And there is actually an own initiative also of this parliament looking at the framework. We are not sure that the social security regulation will be touched there, but we have very concrete solutions. The amendments ready for you to have it work for patients.
Wow.
Thanks a lot.
Nice. Thank you. That's. You get an applause. We'll applaud all of you at the very end because you're all absolutely great. Before I go to Ruth, a reminder, we'll start on the web and then to you, one sentence at the end to help Daniel. So politicians have only one thing, they can put political and money capital. So what will be, or what would, not what you suggested, but all what you heard today, what would you suggest to Daniel and to Commissioner Barhelli? Okay? What would be, what you tell them of all these problems you heard? You know that. We all, politicians, commissioners have limited political capital, MEPs, and limited money. So what will be at the very end, very quickly, one short sentence, because I'm running out of time, to recommend them. That will be our conclusions. But before that, last but not least, Ruth Landenstein, she is chair of the ERNs. Today is the last day, no? Or was it yesterday? Wow. So we'll announce in a minute the new chair of the ERNs, you know, all stress here. She is the coordinator of the ERN for pediatric cancers, as well as professor of pediatrics and senior consultant at St. Anne's Pediatric Hospital. And Ruth is one of these people I admire for her commitment. As I said earlier, working with the ERNs has been a real experience for me. These are committed doctors working very hard for the patients. It gives me illusion to keep going. Ruth, the question to you is, what happens in the hospital? Why is it so difficult? But I want to hear more about cross-border. We had a great session on cross-border. We're all there, where we talked that perhaps the ERNs could facilitate that cross-border because you can follow it up, you know the mechanisms, you know what the patient needs. Why don't we ask the ERNs to ask the cross-border agents? I don't know what the Commission was going to say about that, but as ERNs as the cross-border agents for rare diseases.
Joseph, give me 2 minutes. I will try to make 5 points very briefly as a summary.
I'll give you 4.
Okay, great. Number 1, we talked about the clinical trial setup, complex trials, and the framework needed for it. We have not spoken in strengthening the ERNs in the registry tasks and generating real-world data. The capacity is absolutely there. Number 2, Eurodis has addressed the legislation. We have a major bottleneck because we have 2 legislation that are complex, that are parallel. There is inequity in access. The procedures are slow. There is no ERN entitlement. There is weak data transparency. We don't know who can go where. It's the discretion of member states, and there's national gatekeeping. So many problems, and we have to harmonize this legislation, although it's not the favorite subject, I think, of the politicians, but we really have to push for that because that's super urgent. I think we also can have to bring innovation in ideas. We are talking about the 28th freedom, but think about procedures completely innovative and reverse the process. As a head of a clinical trial unit over 13 years, I always said, I do not understand why we set up countries and sites, and then everybody's waiting for a patient to appear. Why don't we have a process in place that allows an ad hoc inclusion with a lead time. Yeah, everything is prepared, and when the patient is there, it takes you 1 month to include the patient. That brings acceleration, and this revamps the whole system. So I think this would be really enormous advantage for industry, for patients, for everyone. We have to use the modern tools with PREMS and outcomes. In cancer field, we have developed a survivorship passport. It's about integrating the healthcare data into the healthcare systems, have the outcome data, and increase your capacity to capture real-world data. We have seen this in practice. Once you have these registries in place, they're really attracting almost the patients into the system, and your evidence will go up in little time.
I'd like to take, we've just been magically given a few more minutes, which is, you know, relative time. I like that. So, Ruth, the real world evidence, there's a lot of debate out there. I mean, you're saying that we should sometimes put drugs in the market and then trust the real world evidence, and then we'll be able to kill them if then it doesn't work, not the patients, the drugs?
I think we are talking about supportive data. Yeah, just to facilitate and to have supportive data for the trials, complex trials that we previously adopted to patients with high unmet medical needs. It's all about a patient and how to create the evidence in a better way.
But do you trust real world evidence, the data, to follow up the impact of these the drugs and so on?
Alexis made the point that the ERNs have a huge capacity in bringing trustable real-world data to the table.
Yeah.
So let's use the structures and strengthen the structures where it's needed. And last not least, when we talk about cross-border, and this goes back then to legislation, a major drawback of what we have in place, it supports standard of care. It does not support innovation the way it's written. Sometimes authorization is given as an exemption to the rule. As long as this legislation does not address the innovation needs, facilitating the access to go cross-border into a trial, we don't need to have a trial in rare diseases open in 27 member states. We can open it in 3 or 5, but the patient must be allowed and reimbursed for going to these 5 places.
And EMEP is what we want is the EU28 regime. We want one that applies to all the countries, the 28 for 27.
Joseph, sorry for stepping in, but I cannot be silent. Cross-border participation, hello here, Princewood, David Rosenbaum.
I'm allowing but 30 seconds, please, because I'm running out of time already.
Participation is something that we are already doing on a very low-cost practitioner basis. It's not something that we have to speak about. We have the proof that this is possible, and this.
But we need the legislation to back you up.
Yeah.
And you have best practices. I heard that. Thank you. That's very helpful. We have lots of best practices there. We just need the legislation. We need you, MEPs, to pass this legislation. The biotech tax and fast, as Vytenis was saying, we need that legislation very fast, not to wait as for the HTA and many of the others.
And
Ruth,
let's be factual.
wrap up.
We have many patient stories, and your audience will support me in this, that really tell you that this access is not guaranteed. It's a painful struggle to get access to innovation.
But one sentence, can you agree with me that you guys can play an important role, the ERNs, with cross-border?
That's obvious. Yeah, this is
well, it's not obvious for everybody.
Yeah, I think
these
that's
people need to legislate so you can do cross-border.
That's why we do need the strong ERN networks existing and exploiting on what was built up over 10 years. So I think we have a lot of things to bring to the table, and not to be forgotten, academia is a think tank and an early developer, even encouraging industrial developments. I'm a testimony. I started a trial in 2002. We had an antibody in the trial 2007, partnered with industry 2012, and marketing authorization was in 2017. So we have positive private-public partnerships. And when it comes to ATMPs and similar, we need also to build for the reasons of patient needs on the academia capacity. yeah,
Perfect.
in the early stages, because that runs quickly. It helps to create first evidence, and it helps the patients in the small populations and these 7,000 rare diseases.
And connected with the
where we
regulators from the
don't-
beginning. Yeah.
Exactly. Bring
Perfect.
the whole system together and accelerate.
Thank you very much. Think about, now I need very short sentences. I know we moderators always do that and it's a bit unpleasant, but let's try it. I said, this is for Daniel. So Daniel, you'll advise yourself as a policy maker, and for Commissioner Varhelyi. Give one priority or what you heard in this, even the first and the second round, what the hell, both panels. Give us, Christina, we go back to you. You want to be like the FDA? You've been compared with the FDA just now, but what is your priority of all what you heard, Christina, please?
Well, for Daniel, I don't really have a priority. Well, simplification, please. Collaboration, open-mindedness. But otherwise, I wanted to say one very important thing that we want to do at the agency is we will have consultation mechanism on our guidelines with both HTAs and national bodies for pricing. And that will be established in the next couple of years.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much. Michael, you also given us very good ideas today. What's your priority?
It's really challenging to focus on one. I'll try and say,
do that.
Yeah, I'll try and say, think hard about the interface between what's happening at the European level and what will follow on the member state level. What's the link between clinical evidence reviews and value assessments?
Perfect.
For a couple of reasons, and I would just throw in one term, uncertainty and how to deal with that.
Perfect. Daniel, what do you advise to yourself?
First of all, prioritization. What you mentioned, we hear a lot of ideas, and there are many ideas, and all of them are great. But
Which one do you take today?
Some of them has higher impact, some of them has lower impact. I would say data and standardization of this. So we need to implement more on EHDS and also collaborating with all the networks, so that we could do more research on that, and then there we will have more access.
Ruth will like that very much, I'm sure. Shay.
So I will build on what you just said, and I will just suggest something very simple until everything comes together, and having more horizon scanning discussions before those products come to market. So you can plan your system, not only from access, but also from newborn screening and finding those patients and reference center, and that would really help.
And keep playing with the JCA and with the Commission and the regulators. Have them at the very, very beginning of all this data collection and clinical trials and process. Marcelo.
On the Biotech Act, across the political arc in the Parliament, please be more ambitious. 24 months. Because you know, Europe has lost in 25 years 25% of R&D investments in pharmaceutical. Now we have the MFN, now we have the China, and so if we would like to revert this trend, that could be an incredible strong signal to the worldwide community.
Oh, we need that desperately. You?
Yeah, for me, coming from a banking background, I'll say the law of the big numbers, so scale. That's extremely important. I mean, scale not only for us for the investment, but also in terms of markets, I mean, for the biotech companies. And then to build on this, I think the idea of the 28 regime is extremely important. That could be applied to the scale.
I like that very, very much. Rosa, volumes, scale, volumes, scale. Not only bankers believe in that. Rosa.
Well, I'll come back. A binding, standardized cross-border care pathway for patients with rare diseases, and an enabler for that will be the formalization of patient partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Ruth, last word.
Accelerate and help and to think out of the box, and let's innovate through the 28 regime to think rare disease patient-centric. Because there must be exceptional rulings for exceptional populations. Thank you.
Daniel, one final wish for you. Hold on. We need to applaud to Daniel, because Daniel has a presidency coming very soon. And we are all praying for you, your work, your leadership, together with Vytenis and so on. for the EU presidency playing a key role with the biotech, with the orphan diseases and orphan drugs and so on. So apologies for being a bit facetious as a moderator, but that's what I do. Thank you very much for these panelists. They've been brilliant. And I now like to introduce Mar Manu Pereira, the new chair of the ERNs, who is now going to moderate this session.
So, thank you very much. It's really my pleasure, and I have to say it's an honor here. Okay. Thank you. To call on the stage our three MEPs, Vytenis Andriukaitis, Stine Bosse, that are championing this event and much more. And also it's my pleasure to welcome Tomislav Sokol,
Yes.
MEP from the European Popular Party in Croatia. And also he was highly involved in the Critical Medicines Act and in the European data space. So thanks for helping us to make real this event and for all your support. So in this last part, after listening, sorry, because I have my voice, after listening all this interesting debate about if we go back to the title of this event, Health Without Postcode. So, and we have been discussing challenges, but also opportunities around, I would say, three main pillars that has been repeated during these two extremely interesting panels about the need of cooperation for sharing the data, for working together. We need to have all the stakeholders in. For innovation, of course, we were speaking about innovation, and for equity and solidarity. So for closing this event, I would address each of you one question that during in 3 minutes to try to wrap up all what has been discussed and what you consider your main priority in these 3 pillars for really to change or for the future European policy to improve access to treatment to any individual living with a rare disease, a complex disease in any country in Europe. So I would start with Tomislav.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'll try to be brief. I'll give you not one, but two. So first, we need to implement the existing legislation. So we have European Health Data Space, which will be very complex. It will require a lot of investments to build the infrastructure, to create interoperable systems, to digitalize all of our health data, and to be able to catalog all of the health data sets that are existing in Europe, to be able to use it for research and innovation, but also to use our electronic health records when you go abroad. For instance, for cross-border healthcare, that doctors can see all of our health data right away and prescribe us with therapy, diagnosis, medicines, etc., much faster than it was now. Because that's the idea. If you have an electronic health record in all European languages, you go abroad, then they can see right away what's what you need, what's wrong with you. For instance, if you're using European health insurance card, and then to prescribe it with treatment much faster. And also for so-called secondary use of data for research, innovation, development of new medicines. So we need to build this infrastructure, and we need to educate and train people within the health systems, but also the patients and all the stakeholders to be prepared and to have trust in the system if we want this to work. Second, also, when we speak about implementation Critical Medicines Act, one very important thing is that we were able to add all orphan drugs within the scope of the Critical Medicines Act. I think that's very important. That was a big fight because member states, the council didn't want to hear about that, but we insisted. That means that all orphan drugs will be development of manufacturing capacities for all orphan drugs will be faster and quicker than it is now, and simpler, because they will have status of strategic projects. They will be able to benefit from national and European funding. And also, all orphan drugs will be able to be subject to collaborative procurement. So in small member states, small countries, small markets, which are not that attractive, and where we have problem of small numbers of patients and very expensive orphan drugs, now we'll be able to pull these several member states together, and these member states will be able to use European Commission to negotiate with the big pharma companies. So the idea is that they will have a much stronger bargaining position to achieve faster access to orphan drugs and with better, lower prices. So the idea is we pull smaller member states together and make their negotiating position stronger, so they can get access to orphan drugs, and that their patients can get access to orphan drugs. So I think when we speak about rare disease and orphan drugs, that's the biggest achievement of the Critical Medicines Act. And the second point on the new legislation, I've been saying for the last 7 years since I've been in the parliament, we need to change the rules of cross-border healthcare. That's my topic. I did my PhD on that. And these rules are so extremely complicated, some of that was mentioned before, that you need to be a health law expert to know what your rights are. And member states are not always willing to actually provide you with all the information, and also these prior authorization procedures are in many cases very complex. So we need to create organized pathways from one member state to hospitals, health centers in another. We need to strengthen ERNs. We need to use ERNs to provide the so-called right to second opinion, because how it works. So you say you cannot get adequate treatment in your own home country. You ask for prior authorization to go abroad, and then your domestic experts are the ones who will tell you whether they can provide adequate treatment or not. So what we want is that we use European reference networks, that they actually can provide the second opinion on what is the best available treatment within the EU. So not just to look at that country, but all the countries in the EU, and then say which treatment can be made available abroad. And also we need to revise the reimbursement rules, the rules on who pays for this and what. We have Cross-Border Healthcare Directive, and we have Social Security Coordination Regulation, which has now we are finishing the revision of coordination regulation that's been in the pipeline for the last 8 years, but this doesn't include healthcare. So it includes other things, but not healthcare. So we will need to revise it again. I've been fighting all along that we merge rules on reimbursement from Social Security Coordination and Cross-Border Healthcare Directive within the regulation, that everything is in one legislation within the regulation, to make them simpler, to make them easier. And with the main idea is that everything is covered by the health insurance funds, by the payers and the providers of healthcare abroad, so that patients don't have to pay out of their own pocket. So make things faster, make it simpler, make health insurances pay so that patients don't have to pay out of their own pocket, and use European reference networks to provide second opinion on what is the best available treatment in the EU, and create organized pathways, and provide legislation to create organized pathways so that patients do not have to go around and asking what is the best available treatment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would like now to ask Stine, who is one of our great supporters of ERNs and our work, to give your statement or your consideration.
Thank you very much, and I'm very sorry that I'm stressing things a little bit, but I have another meeting and they're all on top of me because I have something that I need to speak about there as well. But thank you for both my colleagues here and also Scarpa. It is a pleasure working with you always. So first of all, I promised you to return to some issues from the beginning. First of all, let's analyze the situation carefully, starting with the patients. And it was said many times from up here, but we just have to let this stay in the room. Patients with rare diseases do not have time to waste. Not one day, not 1 week, not 1 month. So everything we do, we have to be guided by this. Second, for business. Business in Europe dealing with pharmaceuticals are under extreme pressure, something we have never, ever experienced before. And if we want to have the best medicines to our citizens, we have to look after our pharmaceutical sector, period. And that is what should also guide us when we go into this piece of legislation. So we have to find new ways. We have to be very bold. We have to be very courageous. Let me start with the SPCs, mentioned also by our good colleague here. We need 1 more year, and for orphan drugs, 2 more years, with no doubt. It comes with a price, but not doing this comes with a horrible price. So in my opinion, there is not a lot to be discussed. We need to do this. Of course, with conditions, obviously. We need to think Europe first. I'm sorry. It's not something I love. I mean, I'm a liberal. I love the fact that we trade globally and we work globally, but as the times are right now, we have to think about Europe before thinking about the rest of the trading situation. So on finance, we need, of course, and this is not in our hands, but we need to shout it out. We need a much better working capital market. That is one of the problems in Europe. We have a stale capital market, and we need that to be solved in other places. But we need to champion the fact that what has started in the EIB is a very good idea, to think about this area as a portfolio, exactly what you said, and Scarpa has written about it recently. This is excellent. This is, of course, what we should do. It reduces risks, and it adds more capital to a market that really needs it. And then, of course, also when we talk about the SPC extensions, we need to find a method where there is an early warning or an early promise, or how we should put it, so that you know that you are a candidate for SPC, an SPC extension. That can also generate more capital to this area. And then, of course, we need to take down barriers. This has been talked about all afternoon, and for me, this is essential. It is ridiculous, some of the things going on. I'm sorry to be a bit blunt in how I put it. But if you think of the urgency in this area, I think it was very well said by, forget your name, but by you, talking about we need to find new ways of finding evidence. And I appreciate that we have people also amongst us who are very obsessed with finding evidence. That's fantastic. But we also need to make sure that we know that time is a different thing in especially this area. And this is also why we need the 28th regime. Let's not just cut red tape, let's cut the crap. And the crap is that we need all these different places to go to. We should have one strong place of contact that actually fast and of course on a competent basis, but gives cross-border clinical trials the best treatment. And that should of course stay with EMA or wherever people want to place it. I don't want to generate an organizational dispute, but let's just find the best place. For me right now, it is with EMA. And then I want to champion the fact that always, in all intervention, in everything I did from the start of my campaign in Denmark, meeting patient representatives like Rosa here today, I mean, it is so obvious. It is so natural. It is so logical what comes from the patients, and the fact that patients, in especially the rare disease area, they know. They are experts themselves. And of course they have to be involved, and we have to listen carefully. And if I read you right, you are also on board on making these fast tracks and much easier conditions for clinical trials. And then I want to say, yes, of course, we need also to look at the reimbursement rules. That is obviously also a big problem, and it has to be looked into. Whether it's something we can manage in this Biotech Act 1, I don't know, but I know for sure that I am totally agreeing with my colleague here. And then one final comment. Health data space and ERN systems. We should champion them heavily, but we also need to find new funding. And let that stay in the room. Let's find a common path where we can make a fund, build up some kind of finance so that we can really fuel this in benefit of industry and of course also in benefit of our patients. This is underfunded, both areas, and we need to do a lot more. And it's right there in front of us. It is invented, but we just need to put more electricity on the engine and make sure that it really runs and that it runs much faster and much happier than it does today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now is the moment for you, Vytenis, for your last considerations.
Thank you so much. You know, first of all, let me thank you all, because now today we improved a lot of our ideas. And of course, we can now translate those into our Biotech Act, into our amendments, proposals, and so on. I couldn't agree more with all speakers, especially keeping in mind my colleagues. We have raised questions about data, about cross-border healthcare directive. But please keep in mind, proposal to improve cross-border healthcare directive is in the hands of Commission. And Commission didn't come with such proposal. You know, it would be good to send message to Commission that we need initiative. We need to have in our, because legislative logic is Commission has initiative right, Parliament doesn't. And now we are asking once again, both directives, social, coordination directive, social care coordination, and cross-border healthcare directive, both directives should be now, improved. Otherwise, we have no chance to solve problems with reimbursement pathways, because reimbursement pathways now require a lot of harmonization. But let's keep in mind three main cornerstone sentences. One, which is enshrined in the Lisbon Treaty. Open method of coordination is enshrined in treaty, of course, in different areas. Now it's time to improve, to ask member states to use open method of coordination in areas of research, investment, innovations, treatments. Second is mutual recognition principle. We need to encourage member states to use mutual recognition principle and to be more fastest. And third one is enhanced cooperation. And enhanced cooperation can allow us to say, look, member states, if you wish to do more, please do it on voluntary basis. And now we are proposing pan-European clinical trials pathway, inviting member states to work together on voluntary basis, because you know that sometimes treaty do not allow us to intervene into healthcare systems at member states level. But on voluntary cooperation, we can encourage member states to do it. And it's our now task to include it into recital and to see how can we encourage our member states to understand urgency of situation. And of course, also, I couldn't agree more with what just Tomislav and Stine told about all necessity. We need to have financial architecture, more clear financial architecture, more clear package of incentives, and those incentives should be connected with financial architecture, because we need clarity in those areas, because small, medium enterprises, startups, spin-offs, they have no capacities to assess financial, support. Only biggest can do more. Only transnational corporations can do more. Now it's up to us to say, Commission, please propose clear guidelines how you can navigate achieving, financial support on having investment incentive instruments in hands, because we need once again to implement. Let idea, fifth freedom for research, investment in innovation, building on today's existing pan-European infrastructures, European reference networks, 1 million genomics, newborn screenings, biobanks, and European AI factories, European supercomputing centers. Of course, now it's up to us to present comprehensive, system which should be interoperable, interconnected, manageable, and addressing issues as fast as possible. And finally, hater idea. Act, align, accelerate. Such idea should be sent to all member states, to all councils, to see, look, it is time now, because we now have against China and another against United States. Most favorable nation. We can address those challenges which are in front of us when the United States raises this question, because it's unfair competition, but we need now to defend the European Union. One European Union, one socially oriented market, and one pharmaceutical strategy delivering treatment to patients, avoiding postcode. That is a message.
I think we cannot add anything else. So thank you very much, Vytenis. Thank you very much. And thanks for being here today. Have a nice day.